Hey everyone, welcome pastors and Bible study leaders, ready to go deep on Philippians 2:5.
Oh, yeah. I always love digging into this.
And I think we all know this verse by heart, right? But how do we keep it fresh, for our congregations? Because I don't know about you, but sometimes
Well, one that caught my eye right away was from Temple Baptist Church. Their sermon was called Living as Easter People in a Good Friday World. And they had this really intriguing concept of thinking second.
thinking second, what's that all about?
It's essentially about putting others' needs before our own, really embodying that servant heart that Philippians 2:5 talks about.
Okay, I can see how that ties in,
Yeah.
but how do they make that practical? I mean, we can't all go around washing each other's feet all the time.
Oh, of course not. But the pastor does a great job of breaking it down for specific individuals in the congregation.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Like he talks about how husbands can think second by, letting their wives choose the movie, or how teenagers can think second by doing the dishes without being asked.
I like that.
Even in the workplace, a coworker offering to cover a chef for someone who's feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah, it's like taking that big concept of humility and breaking it down into these bite-sized pieces that people can actually apply in their daily lives.
Exactly. And I think that's what makes it so powerful. It's not just this vague idea of being humble. It's about making those small but significant choices to put others first.
And I bet those examples would make for some really relatable sermon illustrations too.
Absolutely. You could even, challenge people to come up with their own examples of how they can think second in their own lives.
It's like giving them a framework for living out Philippians 2:5. Instead of just hearing about it, they're actually equipped to do something with it.
Exactly. And I think that's what we're all about as pastors, right? Helping people understand and apply God's word in a way that transforms their lives.
Now, you mentioned something about thinking serving. Is that like the same as thinking second? Or is there something else going on there?
It's definitely related, but it takes it a step further. Thinking serving isn't just about reacting to needs when they arise. It's about actively looking for opportunities to serve.
So it's more proactive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's about having that servant heart posture, always scanning the horizon for ways to bless others.
I like that. It's like the difference between just holding the door open for someone and, going out of your way to help someone carry their groceries.
Exactly. It's that extra mile mentality that really sets thinking serving apart.
Okay, so we've got thinking second and thinking serving. Two great takeaways already. I'm curious what other unique perspectives we'll find in these sermons.
Well, there's one from Grace Christian Church, PH, that I think you'll find fascinating.
Oh, yeah. Lay it on me.
They titled their sermon, Embracing Christ-like Humility for Unity and Forgiveness. And they really dive deep into the Greek term morph to understand the depth of Christ's humility.
Oh, you had me at Greek.
Oh,
I love getting into the original language. What's
Huh?
so special about morph?
So morph refers to the essential form or nature of something.
Okay.
And the pastor points out that while Christ was fully God, he took on the morphe of a servant.
Hmm.
So it wasn't just a temporary act. It was a fundamental aspect of his being. It was woven into the very fabric of who he was.
Wow, that's deep. So it's not just about what Jesus did, but about who he was at his core.
Exactly. And I think that challenges us to think about our own humility. Is it just something we put on when it's convenient, or is it truly ingrained in our nature?
Yeah, that's a tough question,
Yeah.
but a good one.
And to really drive this point home, the pastor uses this powerful analogy. He compares serving others to picking up trash.
Picking up trash. Okay, I'm intrigued. How does that tie into Philippians 2:5?
Well, he argues that just like Christ humbled himself to pick up the trash of our sin and brokenness, we are called to humble ourselves and serve others, even in seemingly insignificant tasks.
Hmm.
It's about having a willingness to do the dirty work to get our hands dirty for the sake of others.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
It takes something we normally view as menial and reframes it as an act of profound humility.
Right. And it's something that everyone can relate to. We've all had to pick up trash at some point, whether literally or figuratively.
Yeah, and I can already imagine the sermon illustrations that could come from this.
Oh, absolutely. There's so much potential there. And I think it really helps people to connect with the concept of serving on a visceral level.
Man, that trash analogy is really, it's going to stick with me for a while, I think.
Yeah, it's powerful, isn't it? Makes you rethink those little things.
It really does. And it's interesting how we've seen like all these different ways to approach the idea of service in these sermons.
Yeah, we've got like thinking second, thinking serving, and now this whole picking up the trash thing. It's like a whole new way to look at Philippians 2:5.
It is. And I love how these pastors are, they're not just preaching at people, they're actually giving them tools to put these ideas into practice.
That's the key, isn't it? Making it applicable to real life? Because, I mean, what's the point of all this if it doesn't actually change the way we live?
Exactly. So besides those we've already talked about, what other cool approaches did you come across?
Well, Harvest Worship Center had a sermon called Embracing Christ's Humility, a call to serve. And they really focused on the attitude behind our actions.
Oh, the attitude. So it's not enough to just go through the motions of serving.
Right, it's got to
Right.
come from the right place. They actually asked this question in the sermon, like, does our attitude truly mirror Christ's humility and service?
Ooh, that's a good question. Kind of makes you stop and think. Because it's easy to do good things for the wrong reasons, you
Yeah,
know?
totally.
Mm.
Like, we might serve others just to impress them or to make ourselves feel better.
Which, that's not really humility, is it?
Not really. It's more like self-righteousness or something.
So as pastors, how do we encourage people to, you know, to really examine their hearts and make sure they're serving with the right motives?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I think vulnerability is key.
Yeah.
Like, if we're willing to share our own struggles with pride and selfishness, that can create a safe space for others to do the same.
Yeah, it's like leading by example,
Yeah.
showing people that we're all in this together, we're all messed up, and we all need grace.
Exactly. And always pointing back to the example of Jesus, like not just focusing on what he did, but on why he did it. His heart, his motivation.
So helping people understand the why behind Christ's humility, why he chose to empty himself and take on the form of a servant like Philippians 2:5 talks about.
Exactly, because when we grasp the depth of his love and sacrifice, it's bound to change us from the inside out.
Wow, this is really making me rethink how I approach Philippians 2:5. It's not just about behavior, it's about a total heart transformation.
And that brings us to the last sermon we're going to look at today. From chaos to clarity, embracing God's transformative word, from Cocamel Christian Church.
Okay. What's unique about this one?
This one really gets into the mental and cognitive aspects of spiritual growth.
So like our thought patterns and beliefs.
Exactly. They emphasize that adopting Christ's mindset is not just about our actions, it's about an inward transformation of the way we think.
I can see that, but how do we actually do that? I mean, we can't literally get inside Jesus's head and see the world through his eyes.
No, but we can study his words, his actions, his interactions with others, and we can let those things shape our own thinking. You know, challenge our assumptions and rewire our neural pathways, so to speak.
Rewire our neural pathways. I like that. It sounds very scientific.
Well, it's about recognizing that this is a process. It's not something that happens overnight. It takes time and effort to align our thinking with Christ.
So it's not about achieving perfection. It's about those baby steps, day by day, thought by thought, becoming more and more like Jesus.
Exactly. And I think that's where the real transformation happens. It's not about striving for some unattainable ideal. It's about taking those small steps and trusting God to do the rest.
You know, it's interesting. All of these sermons seem to be pushing back against this superficial understanding of Philippians 2:5.
Totally. It's not about being nice or doing good deeds. It's about a radical transformation of our hearts, minds, and actions. And it's not always about these big, complicated ideas, you know?
Yeah.
Sometimes a simple analogy can be so powerful. Like that image of picking up trash. It's something everyone can understand, and it really drives home the point of humility.
It does. It's like, it's not about, being all spiritual and fancy. It's about getting your hands dirty and serving others in whatever way is needed.
Exactly. And I think that's something we need to remember as pastors and Bible study leaders. Like, we don't need to overcomplicate things.
Right.
Sometimes the most effective way to teach is to use those simple, everyday examples that people can connect with.
Yeah, so true. And going back to what you were saying earlier about the inward transformation, I think that's another key takeaway for our listeners.
Totally. We can't just focus on outward behavior. We need to help people understand that Philippians 2:5 is about a change of heart and mind. It's about taking on the mindset of Christ.
Yeah, and that's where those thought-provoking questions can be so helpful. Like the one we talked about earlier. Does our attitude truly mirror Christ's humility and service?
Right. That kind of question can really get people thinking and examining their own motives.
And let's be real, it's not always comfortable.
No, but it's necessary because true transformation starts with honest self-reflection.
And I think it's important to remember that we're not in this alone.
Yeah.
Like as pastors and Bible study leaders, we're on this journey with our congregations. We're all striving to become more like Christ.
So we're all going to mess up along the way.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But that's okay because God's grace is sufficient for us.
It is. And I think that's a really encouraging thought. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I just want to encourage our listeners to keep digging into Philippians 2:5.
Yes, don't let it become just another familiar passage that you gloss over.
Right.
There's so much depth and richness there, and it has the power to transform our lives if we let it.
And don't be afraid to get creative. We've seen how these pastors have used like personal stories, Greek word studies, even everyday scenarios to make Philippians 2:5 come alive.
So use what works for you and for your context.
Yeah. Find what resonates with you and then find a way to communicate it in a way that will connect with your congregation.
Because that's what it's all about, isn't it?
It is helping people understand and apply God's word in a way that changes their lives.
Exactly. Well, I think we've covered some really great stuff today.
I agree. This has been a really insightful deep dive.
I'm feeling inspired.
Me too. And I hope our listeners are too. So thanks for joining us, everyone. And until next time, keep seeking the heart of God in all you do.